What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Gotham Season 4, Episodes 2 through 6. Whew, I've got a lot to get through. This is going to be quite a long review, and in fact, you may see me looking over here a lot. I've got an Excel spreadsheet open to remind myself of what happened in each episode because I didn't want to get them all mixed together. So, just give me a minute. I'm going to slowly get through this. As best I can. So, start off with episode 2, The Fear Reaper. This one picks up right where the first episode left off, which is, we see Jonathan Crane escapes as the Scarecrow, and you can see he sprays the guy with some of his fear gas, and so now the Scarecrow is running riot. So first, we start off with Jim and Harvey breaking into the house where he was being kept to find that guy that he sprayed with his the fear toxin, and he's like hanging up like a scarecrow. And so ultimately, this part of the episode is all about Crane. Everything to do with Jim is all about Scarecrow and trying to track him down. So basically what happens, Penguin comes in and says, hey, the GCPD can't be trusted. I'm the only one that can. You can't catch him, so let me do my job. Which I'm kind of interested to see how Penguin managed to get rid of the fear toxin, because when we last saw him, he was sprayed with it and was freaking out. So, I don't know, it's kind of weird that we didn't ever see him, I guess, get cured of that. But yeah, so he comes into the GCPD, brings a bunch of photographers in and news people, and is just calling out Jim, saying the GCPD can't do it. So Jim says, no, we can. And Penguin pretty much kind of forces him into a deal, saying, if by the end of the day, if you don't catch him, you have to admit that you're not capable of doing your jobs. And so this puts Jim on a quest to go find Crane. Ultimately, Crane goes to the Arkham Asylum and meets up with the warden, who I'm so glad after this episode I'm pretty sure he's gone. I'm pretty sure he's done, because, man, his acting is just so bad. I get it's kind of intentionally overacting, but at the same time, it's, even for overacting, it's still pretty bad. But he goes in there and sprays him with some fear toxin, so he's seeing clowns and freaking out. He sprays a bunch of the inmates with fear toxin, so now they're running muck and attacking everybody in the asylum. And so, of course, the GCPD hears about it. Jim says, hey, come on, let's go stop them. And pretty much nobody goes with him. It's just him going alone. We find out later that Harvey says, hey, this is a war, and this was not a battle I was going to win. He pretty much says this needed to be you, because if I went and I tried to drag them along, they were just going to say no, and then I'd be out. So this was a battle that I needed to give up so we could win the war overall. So kind of makes sense, but a few episodes down the line, we kind of realized maybe that wasn't entirely true, but we'll get to that. But Jim goes there, manages to stop Scarecrow. Pretty awesome scene because he overcomes his fear. We see Lee sitting in a bathtub and she's cut herself and is slowly dying. And Jim manages to overcome that because he's stronger than his fear. And it's just a very nice scene. That's one of the things that later on when Batman is in, fighting Scarecrow, that's one of the things that always haunts the Scarecrow, is the fact that Batman is stronger than his fears. And so that's something that always tortures him. So to see Jim manage to overcome his fears, it's very hard for Scarecrow to deal with. So ultimately, Jim finds out that apparently water is enough to get the toxin, I guess cure the toxin almost. But Scarecrow does get away. Jim manages to stop the riot at the asylum, though. So kind of a win-lose situation, but ultimately he does enough. And Penguin sort of calls him out and says, you're not really good at your job. You didn't capture the Scarecrow. And Jim just kind of shrugs it off like, whatever, I did enough. Then we get to Bruce's side of the story. We see him, obviously, at the end of last episode, he ends up in jail because he happens upon a break-in, trying to stop them, but cannot. And so he goes to try to track them down again. Alfred isn't really approving of this because he's saying, you're not ready. But of course, Bruce just doesn't want to listen. And so he goes to stop these guys. They kind of lure him into a trap. He manages to fight off a few of them and then gets out of the building. And then one of them is about to knock him down and try to shoot him. But then Alfred steps in and saves his life. So it's kind of like that was close moment. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting little episode for him because we're seeing that he is flawed right now. He is fallible. And so Alfred's trying to help him out, trying to help him become a better fighter, but he's still got that youth and experience showing. But ultimately, at the end of the episode, Fox earlier saw him dealing with this, being in jail, got some like rubble on him, and so he brings him an outfit that he can now wear that's like bulletproof, has like capabilities of helping him climb up buildings and stuff. So he's almost like giving him a primordial version of the bat suit. So it's just pretty cool to see. And ultimately, Alfred gives him a mask that he puts on at the end of the episode, and it makes him look like little Batman. So that was really cool. And then we get to, I guess, Penguin's side of the story. Aside from, telling Jim, hey, you're not good at your job, he's also dealing with Barbara, who is dealing with Selena and Tabitha as well. So their stories sort of combined together. We see Tabitha and Selena go to this meeting place because apparently they got some sort of invitation. Barbara is now alive, and so it's kind of like, oh, well, that's interesting. But yeah, so she's alive, and apparently she has all these weapons that she offers Tabitha and Selena, hey, come help me, because we can rule this town together. With Penguin running the town now, if we start selling guns, now we can have some control as well. But of course, Tabitha doesn't want any part of that. But ultimately, Selena manages to convince her, mainly because Selena's tired of just running second fiddle. She's tired of not being good enough, always looked down upon. So kind of an interesting little story there, but at the end of it, we see Penguin comes in with Zaz because he hears about Barbara's little shop of guns and pretty much threatens her, hey, get in line with the program or else Zaz isn't going to make sure you're not in line. He also brings up a benefactor, which we do find out about later, but that's where the mystery started, and I really like how they handled this mystery because, yeah, it was pretty interesting. And then, was this? No. That was pretty much it for this episode. And then the next episode is where things really start picking up. So we got episode 3, They Who Hide Behind Masks. This is definitely a lot more focused on, I guess, what this season is probably going to entail. We see the very first scene is Ra's al Ghul. He's being awoken back in 125 AD and gets a knife. And so we start to find out more about this knife as we go along. We'll start off with that side of it. Bruce sees that Penguin got a shipment in, and apparently it's a very important shipment. And he sees somebody trying to break in and steal it. Of course, judging by their body movement, you can easily tell it's Selena. But Bruce doesn't know. He's just going in to stop them because he realizes that they're being led into a trap. And so Selena's trying to break into this box. She doesn't manage to. Bruce gets there and sort of interrupts it, manages to fight off some guys that are at the dock, and then escapes. Selena escapes as well, but that doesn't stop Bruce there. He then goes and gets into a ship, which this was just a funny scene overall because, first of all, he's talking like this New York accent and trying to hey, I'm just some kid on the street. I want to find my Uncle Albert. It's just kind of funny because we've only ever seen him just talk like Bruce Wayne. And so to see him now putting on an accent was really, really funny. And then he manages to find out through this whole thing. Alfred sort of helps him out as well. But they get on the ship and he finds out about this knife that apparently Penguin got in and is going to sell as well. And so he goes back to his place and looks up about this knife, finds out that Ra's al Ghul is the one who had the knife. There's some weird coincidences, like apparently the picture of the man who was born out of the water was drawn in there. It's a little bit far-fetched to think that they actually drew that back then and so detailed as well to say, hey, that's Ra's al Ghul. But, it's whatever. You have to have them figure out somehow. But at this point, this is where, like I said, the mystery was really, really fun because Barbara has been wanting this knife, and they're not really sure why. She has Selena try to steal it, and then she goes to Penguin and says, hey, I want that knife. Penguin's like, hey, auction for it. And so at this point, he's like, why does Barbara want the knife so badly? And of course, Penguin has asked her about her benefactor again in this episode, and that's when it hit me. I'm like, holy crap, Ra's al Ghul is her benefactor. She came back to life. She suddenly got this money out of nowhere. Somebody's clearly backing her. Ra's al Ghul brought her back to life. And it instantly made sense right there. And I love that whenever I can figure something out because they've been throwing down clues, every now and then. I love it whenever a show can do that. So we see they go to an auction, a great scene because Alfred is just like, look, you have to act like Bruce Wayne sometimes. And that doesn't mean, acting like you're serious Bruce Wayne. Sometimes you have to put on a mask and pretend to be somebody completely different. And so Bruce Wayne's like, so you want me to act like a brat? He's like, yes, exactly. And so this auction scene is freaking hysterical because you just see Bruce like sitting there, $145,000. Haha, got the money to spend. And it's brilliant. David Mazouz, the guy, I think that's how you say his name, the guy that plays Bruce Wayne, he's been doing such a good job up until this point because you've gotten to see him grow up from being kind of this scared little kid, and now he's been trained, and now he's a lot more confident. He's pretty much becoming a vigilante now. And so to see him after all of this, he's been so serious for the past 2 seasons, to see him just yuck it up and be a total bratty kid is freaking hysterical. And I love how they handle it. When the knife goes up for auction, Barbara steps in, she's like, $100,000, and Bruce, $100,000 and $1. 200,000, $200,001, and $300,000 and 1 cent. And then he's just like, you can't outbid me, $2 million. It was great. I love the scene, and Penguin, of course, hearing that, he's just like, sold. I love seeing that woman lose. So ultimately, Bruce gets the knife, and that's pretty much all that happens in this episode as far as the knife is concerned. At the end, we do see Raish comes in to talk to Barbara, and apparently there's something going on here between the two of them. I typed out on the Barb Raish. It doesn't really work as a couple name, but whatever. Yeah, it's kind of weird to see, first of all, the fact that Barbara seems so gung-ho about her, oh, I'm into women thing, and then all of a sudden now she's into men, and then on top of that, the fact that Raish would be interested in her doesn't really feel right for his character, but then again, who knows, maybe training her or something, maybe he saw something in her that he had never seen in anybody else. Whatever the case, apparently there's some sort of connection there that goes deeper. But that's pretty much it for, I think, the knife side of the story. As far as Jim is concerned, he goes to talk to Falcone because at the end of the first episode we saw he was talking to Harvey, and Harvey's like, look, we have to deal with Penguin for now because we don't have the resources. We need an army. And so he's like, hey, Falcone has an army. And so he goes and tracks Falcone down, asks for his help. Falcone says, hey, I'm dying. And so then his daughter steps in, and she clearly is not only the love interest for Jim this season, but she's also kind of the secretive, you don't know if you can trust her type of character this season. But she sizes Jim up, says, hey, I want to help you. And then she shows up in Gotham at the GCPD and says, I'm going to help you take down the Penguin. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see this sort of dynamic going on. It's a little bit different. She's definitely very mysterious, and how they're handling her character so far has been pretty good. But aside from that, the other thing that was a little bit strange in this episode is the Riddler is back, but in probably the strangest way possible. Yeah, so this woman sneaks into the Iceberg Lounge and thaws Riddler out of his ice encasing. She thaws him out and then says, hey, I'm your biggest fan. We went to middle school together or something like that. She's like, I've been following your work as the Riddler. I've been following your rise as a criminal, and I just love everything about you. And so, yeah, that's all she's there for, is just so the Riddler could be thawed out somehow. And that's my only problem with this. I love the idea of Riddler having a fangirl, but at the same time, the only reason she's even in this show at all, she's only in this one episode, Zaz kills her at the end, the only reason she's here is so Riddler could somehow get out. Because nobody else was going to rescue him, it had to be somebody. And ultimately, it's just this random fangirl that pops up out of nowhere, and then we're never going to see again because she's dead. So yeah, it's a little bit coincidental, but at the same time, I do enjoy having the Riddler back on the show. He's a great character, so I do like the fact that he's out. I just wish they could have come up with a better reason than, oh, random fangirl. Um, but we come to find out that apparently he's lost some of his brain power. So, yeah, that's a thing. And it's still going on even in the last episode that I saw. So, yeah, very interesting to see that he's not as smart as he was, and it's clearly eating him up inside. But yeah, all of his riddles suck now. He's not able to figure out riddles as well. So, yeah, it's a very interesting concept going on here. But that's it for the third episode. So then we get to the fourth episode. And we've got episode 4, The Demon's Head. So it starts off with Bruce and Alfred taking the knife to a Dr. Winthrop. It sounded like a name I should know, and he had a grandson there named Alex. I'm like, I should know who this is. So I looked it up to see, who is this in the Batman lore. Apparently it's nobody, and then it spoils at the end that Ra's kills him. So, yeah, that was a little frustrating. But so apparently these people are just random people that Bruce and Alfred know. They know a lot about history and about the markings on the dagger. So try to figure out what's going on. Let's see. Yes. So after they give the knife to the doctor, Ra's walks in and pretty much just says, "Give me the knife." The doctor's like, no, tells Alex to go hide in another room with the knife. And so then Ra's just snaps his neck and tries to find the kid, but the kid does a very good job of hiding and so manages to escape. So then Jem shows up the next day, finding the crime scene, finding out what's going on. Bruce shows up and says, "It's my fault, I'm the one that gave them the knife to look at, so let me help." Jem says no, but that doesn't stop Bruce. So Jem is tracking down some leads, hearing that Barbara is involved. She bit on the knife. Bruce actually goes with Jem not knowing, and shows up and says, "Are you working for Ra's al Ghul?" to Barbara, calls her out on it. And Jim's just like, what are you doing here? So yeah, he's very clearly pissed about this, but at the same time, Bruce is the only one that might know where Alex, the grandson of the doctor, might be. And so he and Bruce are sort of working together. They happen upon this library that Bruce knows Alex probably is going to be at. And so he's going to track down the kid. We see Ra's and Barbara are talking, and Ra's sends a couple of his minions. One of them is called Anubis. He said the other name, I think, but I didn't hear that guy's name. But Anubis is pretty much just like this man that acts like a dog. Yeah, just kind of weird. And then the other guy's just this big, bulking guy that has a chain. He's the one yanking the chain for Anubis. And so, yeah, he sends them out and says, "Hey, track down the kid, get the knife." And so whenever Jem and Bruce show up to the library, they attack. Some fighting goes on. They manage to escape, though. But now Bruce and Alex are missing. Jem is trying to figure out where they might be. And Alfred is rightly pissed that this could possibly happen. But one of the things that I do kind of find interesting about this is that Alfred and Jem are sort of butting heads a lot in these couple episodes, because we see Alfred doesn't want to tell Jem what's going on because, he's trying to keep the secret, and Jem, he's trying to figure it out, but nobody's telling him anything, so he's pissed about it. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic going on right now, that they're working together, they're trying to save people, they're trying to save Bruce's life, but at the same time, it's not really working very well. They're not working together very well. And it's very clearly causing some tension. So we see Jem figures out where they might be hiding, goes to the museum to track them down. Anubis and his handler are both there trying to attack Bruce and Alex, but they manage to escape. Jem shows up just in the nick of time to save Bruce's life from Anubis, shoots at him, and then Anubis attacks, knocks Jem into this bone encasing, so he grabs a bone and then tosses it out the window. Anubis is like, runs and tries to grab the bone, and then jumps out the window and dies. Funny, stupid, it's somewhere in between. It's kind of stupid, but it's also pretty funny. But then the big guy attacks, and so Jem and Bruce and Alex are kind of working together. Bruce obviously is trying to use some of his fighting technique. Alex steps in to try to help Bruce because he sees he's in trouble. And then ultimately Jem steps in, kills the guy. But Ray shows up at this time and has Alex, with a knife, and says, "Give me the knife or else I kill Alex." And Bruce doesn't want to. He's saying, "No, I can't give this to him." Jim's like, "Just give him the knife." He's like, "I can't. I can't let him have this knife." And so Raish is just like, "I'm glad to see you're learning," and then slits Alex's throat. And I'm just like, wow. So yeah, Bruce obviously very upset about this. Jim is just like, "Wait, what?" And so, Raish gets taken to Blackgate at the end of this episode. And it's just kind of like a strange feeling at the end of this episode. Like the good guys didn't win the day. Alex died. It's kind of an interesting little concept. And of course, Bruce feels very responsible for this. So yeah, I do like how they're handling this. It's a very intense moment. Just the intensity is building through all of it. So very good ending to this episode. As far as Penguin is concerned, we see that Sophia contacts him. Penguin contacts her and brings her in saying, "Look, I know you're a Falcone. I think you're going to try to open up your business." And she's just like, "No, I don't want anything to do with that." And so some of Falcone's old men come in to talk to her, and Penguin uses that opportunity to kill the rest of the men loyal to Falcone. But she kind of says, "Hey, my dad would have handled this better. My dad would have used these men, made them become loyal to him. Just killing them is just a waste of space." And so it kind of walks out on that note, almost like she's smarter than him. And you can see it bothers Penguin a lot. But yeah, start of an interesting dynamic going forward. But the other thing going on in this episode, let me see. Yes. So Penguin gets some riddles from the Riddler. These guys come in rapping about the riddle. So Penguin thinks he's figured out the riddle, goes to where he thinks Riddler's going to be, and then he's not there. So then these guys show back up with another riddle rap and just says, "This riddle's terrible. There's no way I can figure it out." So then the Riddler just storms right into the Iceberg Lounge, just like, "How could you not figure out my riddles? What is going on?" And Penguin's just like, "Your riddles suck now, Ed. Like, these aren't good riddles. You've truly lost your mind, haven't you?" And just calls him out on it. And so in walks Mr. Freeze, and Penguin's just like, "I'm going to freeze you again." And Edward's just like, "You're right. I'm not the Riddler anymore." And so at this point, Penguin is just, "Never mind, don't freeze him. He's not the Riddler. I only want to freeze the Riddler, but now that you're just Edward Nygma, I don't have any reason for you to be frozen anymore. So you're free to go. See you later." And so this kind of ends that little charade going on. It's kind of a side story, but it does set up how Nygma is now on his own, and Penguin's just like, whatever, screw him. So kind of an interesting little setup there. But then we get into the 5th episode, The Blade's Path, and starts off with one of my kind of freak out moments from the end of last season, which was seeing that Butch Gilzine is actually Cyrus Gold, who becomes Solomon Grundy. That was a really cool Easter egg thrown in, and so this actually shows his birth. We see Butch gets taken, he's in a coma, these guys take him and just like, all right, let's just dump him into this swamp. Kind of weird that they're doing this, but yeah, they're just like, yeah, we'll just take him upstate. See you later, Butch, and then toss him into the swamp. And then the camera pans around and we see that there are Indian Hill toxins in the swamp. And so that's why he ultimately gets resurrected as Solomon Grundy. He doesn't know who he is. We find out a bit later that he doesn't have a heartbeat. He doesn't bleed. He just leaks swamp water. So yeah, very interesting way to bring alive Solomon Grundy. But that's part of this episode, is a big part of this episode. We see that he happens upon Nygma, who's trying to rob this medicine store, trying to find some medicine that might help him get his intellect back. And so he's threatening this guy in a lab coat, and he's holding a gun to him, like, "I'm gonna get you." And the guy's just like, all right, look, I have some medicine in there. It's Smartify pills. And he's just falling for it. He's like, "Where?" And he's like, "It's in that blue bottle." And then grabs, I think it's like a nail gun or something, and then nails Nygma's hand to the top of the fridge, grabs the gun. He's like, "Man, you're using a fake gun?" It's so funny because seeing Nygma be so incompetent is hysterical. But ultimately, Nygma does escape, happens upon Grundy, and is just like, "What are you doing alive? I thought you were dead." And so these guys that Grundy happened upon, where he first heard the Solomon Grundy poem and got his name, he attacks them at the beginning, and then they find him again and just like, hey, we're going to teach you a lesson. And so Grundy's just like knocking him around, just pretty much taking them all out. But one of the guys manages to set his arm on fire, and so Nigma runs away and then comes back with some water and douses the fire, which then starts their friendship. But yeah, so both of them are kind of becoming friends until they happen upon this fight club, and Nigma's just like, this is a great idea. Grundy, you can fight, you're pretty much invincible and super strong, so yeah, let's do the fight club. And so that's pretty much where they end off. This episode actually ends with the owner of the fight club saying, yeah, all right, we'll have the doctor look at you. And then we find out that the doctor is apparently Lee. She's working here for some reason. So that's all that happens with them. We see that Jim and Bruce, their stories once again really intertwine in this episode. So it really revolves around Ra's al Ghul and the fact that he's in Blackgate right now. We see Bruce is blaming himself for Alex's death. Like I said at the end of the last episode, he very clearly thinks that he's responsible for it. Alfred and Jim once again butting heads about this whole thing. Feel like both of them are kind of in the right, but also don't really know the whole story. So it's hard to say that either one of them are wrong. So they're having an argument. Bruce hears that apparently Ra's is going to be taken out of Blackgate and moved. And so he takes it upon himself to grab the knife and go kill Ra's al Ghul before he can leave. So before we get to that, there is a little scene kind of thrown in there. I think it's the only scene. Yes. It's the only scene with Barbara in this episode. She walks into Blackgate to talk to Ra's, and he's saying, look, this is goodbye. This is the last time we'll see each other. And so they both touch the glass. And when they do, there's some sort of noise like power's being transferred, and she's like, what did you do? So I'm not really sure what that is. It's not explained yet, but curious to see what that's going to mean later on. But yeah, so we see Bruce sneaks into Blackgate and goes to kill Ra's al Ghul, but ultimately can't find the willingness to do so, so Ra's calls him a coward. Some of his guys that are apparently have taken over Blackgate, pretending to be the guards there, they bring him down to the sewer part of Blackgate. Meanwhile, Jim and Alfred show up, try taking on all these guards that are not really guards, they're all fake guards. They manage to take him on and take him out. And so now they go to try to find Bruce, but a little too late. Ra's has been saying, I want you to kill me, you have to kill me to take my place, to become my rightful heir. But Bruce is just like, no, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to kill you. Until Ra's pretty much says, your future, you're going to become this very wealthy man, you're going to live a peaceful life, but then I'm going to come back and I'm going to kill everybody you've ever loved and everybody you've ever cared for. And at this point, just taunting him, Bruce finally snaps and then stabs him and kills him, and he just fades and rots into nothingness. So yeah, kind of an interesting take here, now that Bruce has officially killed somebody. I don't know if this is going to sort of set him on a path of no killing, because we know he was already on that path, but now it's like maybe this will cement it. He will never kill another soul. But it does kind of ask the question, Ra's is now dead. Like, he's officially dead. I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure they said that this knife was the only thing that could kill him, so I'm fairly certain he's not coming back now. Kind of weird. But I'd be interested to see how they're going to handle this. So yeah, that's pretty much all of their story. Jim is just like, look, you're still the same guy, you're still the same Bruce Wayne that I met in the alley. Tries to help, I guess, encourage him, but Bruce ultimately decides, I'm going to hang up the suit, I'm done with this. But Alfred actually tries to say, look, you are helping the city, you are doing some good, so I think it's a little too soon. But Bruce seems pretty set that he's going to do this, so probably the last we're going to see of the suit for now, which kind of makes sense, because it wouldn't be right if he all of a sudden became Batman at this age. He's still a little too young for it, so it would make some sense that maybe he decides to call it off for a little while. So I do like how they're handling this. But then the final thing to talk about is, like I said, the Sophia and Penguin relationship, which is really, it's kind of expounded upon in the last episode, but in this one, this is where it kind of starts. We see that Sophia and Jim are kind of hitting it off, and she's telling him, look, I'm going to have Penguin in my hand by, whenever. She says, I'll be able to control him, and I'll be able to help you out of this situation. And so she's talking to Penguin, and she offers, her help, because he's not really happy with the fact that, crime is 60-something% under his control, but that's still quite a bit that's not under his control. There's still a lot of holes in his little Pax Penguina plan. So, yeah, kind of interesting to see. She walks in and she's just like, look, let me help you, and offers to take him to lunch so they can talk about it. And on top of that, it means that he now has the backing of Falcone, which means, that will help him get some more crime under his control. So it's an interesting plan. Penguin's a little bit hesitant, but ultimately he does decide to go. She invites him to this small little place where she has the woman there that cooks make some of his mother's recipe. Like inch perfect, exactly how she used to make it. And he kind of freaks out about it. Like, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to win me over. You're trying to impress me. Well, it's not going to work. And he's very clearly paranoid by it. But then she shows up and just kind of talks down to him. Just like, look, my father never wanted to help anybody. I just want to help you. I know what it's like to have a parent who just doesn't understand and, doesn't want to help you. So let me be a parent that's going to help you, and pretty much trying to take the place of her mother, or of his mother, and it works. She starts massaging his leg because it's hurting, and he's just like letting her do it, and pretty much just opens up to her a little bit. So yeah, her plan definitely gets set in motion this episode, but it's not until the next episode, the final episode of these 5, where the plan really starts to come into play. So let me make sure there's nothing else in this episode. Alright, that's it for that episode. So now the 5th and final episode of these 6, episode 6, Hog Day Afternoon. So we open up with Nigma talking to Lee because he sees that she's in this fight club and asking for help, but she's just like, no, not going to happen. So basically what this episode consists of for Nigma, Grundy, and Lee is Nigma's trying to figure out how to get Lee to help him. Lee does not want to help him. She wants him to suffer because of what he did to her, to Kristen, to Jim. She's just like, you can be stupid for all I care. Grundy is winning his fights easily. Lee's trying to kind of convince him, look, Nigma's just using you. He's not actually your friend, but Grundy's just too stupid to understand. And so we see a little scene where Nigma follows Lee down to kind of a basement cellar type thing, and finds out that she's apparently been helping all these homeless people. Come to find out later, apparently these people were really affected by the Tetch virus whenever it went off, so she's been helping them with certain things. People in this area with certain illnesses because of what she did and her hand and all of that. So, kind of a nice little story, but because Nigma sees this, he's like, alright, I'm going to use this against you. And she's like, well, how are you going to do that? And he's like, are you going to blackmail me? He's like, yes, that's exactly. He's like, well, what's your plan then? And he's just like, if you don't help me, I'm going to do something really bad to that clinic. And once again, just super, super funny that he can't come up with a good plan. Lee laughs him off like, you truly are an idiot now. It was so funny. But ultimately, Lee finds out that she's running out of meds. The owner of the fight club, who's allowing her to kind of run that little clinic down there, she's apparently not giving her enough money or something like that, and so finally she goes up to Nigma. She's like, alright, I'll help you, just give me the money. And that's pretty much it for their story. So very, very interesting how that's going to go forward. Is Lee going to be able to help him? How much longer is Grundy just going to keep winning these fights? Is there going to be somebody who's going to manage to beat him or something? I don't know. I'm very curious to see where this is all going, but it's kind of an interesting little dynamic, seeing Butch Gilzine, now Solomon Grundy, seeing Nigma, who's no longer the Riddler because he's stupid, and seeing Lee, who used to be this high-end, classy doctor, now working in this trashy place. I don't know, it's very interesting to see these 3 working together. It's a lot of fun, too. Finally, the last thing to talk about in this episode, the only other thing, really, to talk about in this episode, besides the whole thing with Penguin and Sophia, which I'll talk about last because, like I said, it's kind of becoming an overarching story right now. Is everything going on with Jim and the GCPD? We see that this man is killed and then a pig head is put on top of him, and I got really excited because Professor Pig is now in Gotham. The only reason I even know about Professor Pig is because of Batman Arkham Knight. He shows up as one of the side villains in there, and I find out about him in there that apparently he just hates anything that's not perfect. Anything that's ugly. He wants beauty, and he's very interested in like opera, and he talks very eloquently, even though he's got a pig head on him. It's kind of weird, but it's also very interesting how it's all handled. But in this one, apparently, he knows about the men who are working for Penguin, his bagmen, as they call them. These are the guys that get the money from Penguin and pay the cops that are working for Penguin, that are letting the men with license run free. So he finds out about these bagmen and goes and starts killing off each of them. He has 4 pig heads overall, so there are 4 bagmen. Jim, finds out about this and is trying to find out, okay, who are the other bagmen. So he and Harvey are sort of working together on this one. They're questioning all these cops, and of course all of them are like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're just clearly trying to do a manhunt here, and this is bullcrap and all that. So none of them are answering questions until one they finally just stick in the trunk of a car on a hot day until he's like, all right, fine, I'll tell you. So they find out about one of the other bagmen, but find out too late because apparently one of the bagmen and one of the bagwomen were kidnapped before and set up in front of a courthouse and, pig head on and all. So they're trying to figure out what to do next. Jim questions a blind man, kind of a funny scene there, asking about, what did you see? Did you notice anything interesting? And finds out about this Filippelli plumbing van or something like that. So Jim uses that information to track down where did this van possibly go. They track it down to this building where they find yet another bagman, already been captured, already been set up with a pig head. So Jim pulls the pig head off only to find out that apparently it's been set up so that whenever he did, a string would pull the pin on a grenade inside of his stomach. So Jim and Bullock run away, but a little bit too late because the blast from the grenade knocks him out. He wakes up to find out that Pig has taped him down to a chair, and Harvey is nowhere to be seen. And so now Pig is just asking him all these questions, saying, look, you are trying to do all of this, and I truly respect you for that, but why do you care so much about Harvey Bullock? He's just weighing you down and pretty much talking about all of this like he knows everything that's going on with the corruption. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'll be very interested to see what his story is because it sounds like he's not a cop, but it sounds like maybe some of the corruption having to do with Penguin and all that has affected him in some way. Whether he lost somebody close to him or whether, I know he's kind of disfigured in the game, so I don't know if he's going to be disfigured in the show as well, but I'll be very interested to see what his story is. But yeah, little conversation about morality with Jim, but ultimately Harvey wakes up, so he goes to silence him. Jim manages to break out of his chair and tries to stop Pig because he's got a knife up to Harvey's throat, but then slices Harvey's throat. I'm just like, Ultimately, though, just like with Barbara in the first season, apparently throat cuts are not as deadly as they used to be. They do say that he did cut it just deep enough to where either Jim had to decide, let me save you or let me go after him. They do kind of confirm that yes, he did do it, not enough to kill him on purpose. But ultimately, Harvey wakes up and Jim questions him and says, how long have you been on Penguin's payroll? Because he realizes at that point Harvey has been taking money from Penguin and pretty much tells him, it's time to stop. You can't keep taking money from him. That's how you can repay me for everything that happened. And you can see Harvey's really broken up about it. And I'm not sure if he's going to quit or if he's just going to keep taking money or what. But yeah, it's kind of putting a little bit of a rift between Jim and Harvey. And the fact that Jim and Alfred already had a little rift and now Jim and Harvey have a little bit of a rift between them. It's kind of interesting to see that he's forming rifts with all of his former friends, but yet he's getting closer and closer to Sophia Falcone. kind of interesting. So I'll be very interested to see how that's going to happen, or going to keep moving forward. But that's about it for Jim's story. We see Professor Pig at the end of the episode saying, tomorrow the axe will fall. So clearly he's not done yet. I'll be curious to see if he's involved in the next episode or if this is just like a one-off episode and he'll appear later on down the season. But that's it for all of that. Now we get into the final thing to talk about, which is Sophia and Penguin. We see they're kind of forming a little bit of a bond together. Zaz keeps calling it a date, a relationship, but Penguin's just like, no, it's not, it's not, it's not. So, yeah, not really sure what it is to Penguin or to Sophia, but she's clearly trying to gain his trust. So they're hanging out a lot, but ultimately she misses a lunch one time. And so Penguin, of course, just the one time, and now he's paranoid because that's just who he is. So he has Zaz track her down and try to figure out what's going on. He takes some pictures. She's meeting with some guys, and we come to find out she's meeting with the mayor and then the zoning commissioner. And so Penguin, of course, sees this as she's trying to start a war with me. She's trying to undermine me. And so he confronts her at her house, takes her to where Zaz saw her hanging out, and she's like, no, you've got it all wrong. Like, this is a complete misunderstanding. And so they get there, and Penguin finds out that apparently she's been trying to build an orphanage for a bunch of homeless kids. And so, of course, he's just like, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. And she's like, how can I forgive you when I already have, or something like that. I don't remember. It's some sappy line. She's clearly she's got him eating out of the palm of her hands, very clearly set up to make her look suspicious so he would suspect her, so that whenever he finds out that what she's doing was actually a good thing, he feels terrible about it, and now that's it. Now he is completely taken in by her. It's such a clever plan, and I love what they're doing with her character, because they're making her seem like, at times, maybe she's a little naive, maybe she doesn't understand who she's dealing with, but then she shows at the end she knows exactly who she's dealing with, and she has got him just... It's almost like she's just walking a dog, and Penguin is the dog. Like, it's so brilliantly set up in how she's handling all of it. So, yeah, those are all 5 episodes. God, I'm at 42 minutes. That took forever to get through. But at the same time, it's done very well. It's one of these shows that, yes, a lot happens in 5 episodes. Yes, there's a lot to talk about. But it all has a purpose. It all feels like it's meaningful. Aside from the girl that thought out Enigma, yes, that did have a purpose, but it was kind of a throwaway thing. But that's it. Everything else has had a purpose. It feels like it's building up to something. They do a very good job of storytelling to the point where a lot happens in every episode, but it never feels like it's too much. Each episode clearly had a purpose, from dealing with Scarecrow to finding out about the knife to finding out about Ra's al Ghul to killing Ra's al Ghul, and then the pig comes in. Each episode had its own unique feel, its own unique purpose, and that's what I love about this show. They do a very good job of separating these stories very well, keeping it to where each part feels like its own thing, but at the same time it's telling a continual story. It's a really good show. In my opinion, it's probably one of the more underrated shows on TV right now, because everybody's talking about the DC CW universe, Marvel Netflix shows. Gotham kind of flies under the radar, but I think they're doing a very good job with what they've got. So, yeah, I really enjoyed these past 5 episodes. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these past 5 episodes? What was your favorite out of these 5? Let me know. We can talk about it and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Gotham reviews. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.